Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Dark Hustle. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast and subscribing and following us. It's super cool. You guys are the best. Also, if you are not a member of our Patreon, what are you doing? Go check it out. It's got multiple levels to choose from, and we have early access over there for all of our episodes and a bunch of other stuff. So go check us out on Patreon.
Hello.
Hey, is this Veronica?
Hi. Yes.
Hey, it's Brianna.
Hi. Nice
I'm a
to
little
finally
weird.
hear the voice.
You and I have had a interesting morning, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely.
It's okay. Life happens.
Yeah.
I'm
Sometimes
5 minutes
hurricanes.
late.
It's okay. Again, I'm here with this tropical storm. I've been kind of back and forth too.
Oh wait, whoa, y'all. Okay, so yes, you're in southern. You said southern Florida. So what's going on?
So I'm on the East Coast. It's not really. It's coming towards the Gulf. So I think more so like Tampa and the Panhandle are getting directly hit. But those outer bands. So like we're all kind of under a tropical storm warning. So it's just rainy and chaotic. People forget how to drive when it rains.
I mean, that's okay because we forget how to drive when it snows. So. My old boss used to give me hell about that because she's from Queens, and obviously upstate they know what they're doing, so you got to give us a break down here. Like, we're not used to it, but they just used to run me ragged. They're like, oh yeah, it's a chance to snow, so you guys don't even know you don't even leave your house.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think I've ever even driven in snow, so proper to them.
Okay, well, first of all, little backstory. I ran across you through TikTok because I saw you painting this picture, and I was like, my jaw just dropped. I was like, oh, my God. Like, it was gorgeous. So,
Thank you.
and it was obviously of a horse. So
Mm-hmm.
have you painted your entire life, and has it always been horses, or is it just something that you just started doing?
Yeah, so yes, for both. I mean, my parents met through showing horses, so they've always been part of my life. They bought land in a barn the day after I was born. And
Oh, wow.
so as soon as I could walk and before, it was safe enough for me to ride, it turned into me just drawing them. Do you remember those little pamphlets that they give kids at restaurants where you could draw and, do the little
Yeah.
things in there? Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was kind of my mom was like, oh, maybe you should draw a horse, because most of the time we'd be at horse shows and going to dinner and getting those. So it was starting from there, and then I'd get home from school. If we didn't go to the barn, we went straight home, and I had a little art bench in the garage, and it was just my space. It was covered in glitter, it was covered in paint, covered in glue, and that was kind of the beginning of it all, and it was typically horses. Yeah, they were my first, I guess, kind of the first thing that I tried to master, and then really got into it as I got older. I took a break from it because, it's not really it's something that people, I guess, appreciate and try to understand and like to look at it. It's pretty, but it's not really something appreciated enough to make a career out of it, at least at that age for me.
Yeah,
so
right.
I took a bit of a break from it in high school and went to college, and then it became kind of an outlet for me when my grandma passed away, and I moved away from home, and I was just kind of like, well, maybe I should get back into this, and it'll help me feel better, or at least have somewhere to transmute this energy. It's a bit of an alchemy thing for me. And then social media, again, Instagram, really, I guess, yeah, honestly, I owe a lot of me regaining that confidence and finding it again through social media. It was people, I guess, validating me and saying, like, yeah, you are really
right,
good
like
at this.
me. I was like, holy cow, that's dope.
Thank you. But yeah,
well, I was listening to your video, and I was like, I don't think this girl realized how good she is. Like,
thank you. It's just, it's hard. I mean, there's that upside of social media where you get validated through it, but then there's always that looming comparison to other people where you're like, oh, wow, that's so impressive. I don't know if I can do that, until you actually try to do it. And then sometimes it works and sometimes it flops. I really didn't get as much, at least for TikTok, the time lapses people really loved on Facebook if they already knew me, but when it came to TikTok, people liked my horse more. So I was like, well, let me try the painting thing one more time, and instead of music, I'll talk about it and see if that helps, and it did. So
Yeah,
it's
that was
definitely
really cool.
Yeah, thank you. It's both of them, horses and painting, have always been really close to me and really been my inner child kind of, I guess, nurturing activity / outlet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, I mean, who expects your average human to go through life and not do something that's considered, fun or even a hobby, or even if they do make it a career, something that you love? Like, what's the point of living if you're not doing something that you love, regardless if you monetize on it or not?
Yeah, absolutely. My mom always told me, like, you should have well, she's always encouraged all of me and my brothers to be multifaceted and have something that is good for you and nurtures you physically, something that is good for your heart, something that's good for your mind. And I feel like, at least for reining in particular, that is a good mix of all of them. But the art really is more my heart and emotionally fulfilling to me.
Well, yeah. Okay, so that was my next question. Have you always rode reiners your entire life, or like were your parents reiners, or did you just kind of fall into that?
So this is kind of the story might take a few different turns as I tell it, but like I mentioned, my parents met through it, right? So my dad and my mom both, had ponies as kids, and back in the day, like this is, again, South Florida in the 70s and 80s, so reining was not huge, but my dad, got into horses because he wanted to be a cowboy. That was like his thing, but all they had down here was hunter jumpers, so it was fine. He loved horses enough that he would do whatever they had. And then he and his sister got into Appaloosas specifically and went into the all-around. So he dropped the jumping and the breeches, and my aunt kept doing that, but also added in like pleasure and equitation, showmanship. My dad did a little bit of that too, but he found a Floridian reining trainer through the Appaloosas.
Oh,
And
wow.
then he found them, and then through them he found Terry Thompson, and then he was riding with him. And my mom was doing the hunter jumpers, like up and like basically even when she met my dad, she was doing that. But she also got into the Appaloosas through Dave and Kim Moore, and through Dave and Kim Moore and Terry Thompson, because Dave used to train under Terry. They met at the Appaloosa World Show in, I don't know, 94, something like that. And then had me 2 years later, got married and all of that too, had my brothers, and pretty much as soon as I could walk and as soon as they would let me, I went straight into the lead line. And back then, they wouldn't let, everything 10 and under was walk trot only, so we didn't have reining up until I turned 11. So then, as soon as I was 11, my dad gave me his reiner. They even gelded him for me, which was huge, but he was such a saint. So I started when I was 11 or 12, and then also started riding with Terry when I started reining, and then went to college, took a break, and when I came back, I started riding with Dave Moore, who was my mom's trainer growing up. So kind of was in the all-around world for a while, all the walk trot stuff, kept doing the all-around, started reining when I was 12 or 13 with my dad's trainer, and then once I was in my 20s, around COVID, I think I came back from grad school, started riding with my mom's old trainer. So that's kind of where the story took a lot of directions, but yeah, it's a little long-winded.
Well, that's kind of cool, because I was just fixing to ask you, do you think that having your mom from like the hunter side and then your dad from like, the western side, do you think that's kind of helped you to be able to have both of those aspects when it comes to, on a competitive edge? That's pretty cool to have both of those.
Yeah, I was really lucky to have that. It's a shame that my brothers weren't into it, because it kind of forced my mom to retire because she had to stay home with them and watch them. They weren't as interested in horses, but yeah, she helped me a lot.
You were the oddball.
Yeah, definitely. So it kind of turned into me being my dad's little sidekick and buddy at a lot of the shows when I was growing up. But yeah, she helped me a lot in the beginning when it was like she was, my lead line partner. So she was definitely someone that I looked up to. But you reach a certain age where like, okay, mom, okay, dad, like you're just it's hard to have your parents coach you, if that makes sense. Because, like, you think they're just telling you just to say it, at least at that age, I felt that way. So I appreciated that they didn't fully take on the role of parent/trainer because it helped me get different perspectives and different sides. But now, now that I am with Dave, and I appreciate, of course, all the things that he's taught me, my dad also gives kind of if he doesn't reinforce what Dave says, he adds extra things that Dave ends up saying later on. So it's cool to get those different perspectives and to have parents that have been in it for so long. Of course, any kind of feedback or little notes that they give me is greatly appreciated. It's invaluable for sure to have parents that appreciate and support it too, because I know there's so many out there that their families are like, how are your race? Like, how did your rodeo go? So it's cool to have them be familiar with it.
That is like a catch-22, because either way that you look at it or any way you pan it out, you could be like, okay, well, it sucks that they're so far into it, or then you could be like, oh, well, it sucks that they're not, so it's cool that, anybody is able to appreciate whatever aspect they get out of it, because, you're right. So let me ask you this. I was going to ask you another question. As far as your paintings and, artwork is concerned, do you only really just focus on your stuff, or have you ever had anybody like commission you out or reach out and be like, hey, can you paint my horse, or can you do this, or can you do that? And how long does it normally take?
Yeah, so I prefer when people reach out for commissions. So that horse from that TikTok is Taylor Zimmerman's horse, TJ. She shows him in the freestyle.
Oh, cool.
And that shot was just gorgeous, and the photographer, Keegan, is great too. So I really prefer, actually, when people reach out for me to do their horses, because it's cool to get how much they love. And, everybody, of course, like, has their heart horse, and they have all these stories and memories and things that they love and want to celebrate about this horse. And to me, painting them is a huge honor to be able to try to encapsulate all of that love and passion that they have for their horse and for the sport through these pieces. So, like I was kind of talking in the voiceover, the eyes are really where a lot of that comes from to me. When it comes to color and the drama and the details and all of that, of course, that's great and that's fun, and I love doing that. But I always ask for a couple of details prior to me starting it. Like, okay, well, what are their mannerisms? Are they a sillier horse? Are they a more calm, gentle giant type? Like, how can I try to communicate that through the way that I paint this? So I have in the past, when I was kind of just doing it more for my own therapeutic reasons, I would, do my own horses, or like I'd just find like stock images, or I'd do more abstract/expressionist kind of bright colors and these energetic gesture horses. And then once people were asking, hey, I'd really like to get my horse done, or can you do my 3 horses together even though I don't have a picture of them? Here's what they were. This is my childhood horse. This is my horse now, and this is the one that I showed growing up. So it's really cool. The things that people want to put together, I get really excited to be a part of. So that's definitely something that I have gotten really lucky with, at least in the recent past.
That is kind of cool. That's a good idea, to ask somebody to kind of intertwine multiple, because we have all kind of had particular horses at different stages in our life, especially if you started it young, that meant something to you. That's really cool.
Yeah, that was a really fun piece to do.
And that's interesting that you ask about their personality before you paint. That's really interesting, because I never would have thought that. I would have just thought, okay, you get a picture and, okay, well, you're going to sit there and just look at the picture and paint it, and it's not going to be that big of a deal. But the fact that you ask all of that is really kind of cool, and that helps you to be able to depict the painting better.
And I think it helps I think everybody likes to feel involved when they commission these projects. So the more that I learn about them, their relationship, the horse's career, for me personally, my horse is a total goofball on the ground. Like, he is a giant puppy with a huge personality, and then all business in the saddle, or when I'm in the saddle, right? So those are things that I take into consideration, and I feel like it just makes it all more personal and more meaningful when the finished product is actually done.
Yes. Now let me ask you this: do you show a lot, do you just go to all of the big shows, or do you go to every show that you can? Do you make it a point? Is there a certain goal that you have for yourself when it comes to reining and showing right now with your current horse?
I try to go to as many as I can. it's Florida, so we have a Tampa show. My dad is actually the president of the South Florida Reining Horse Association, so he goes to all of them anyway. But
Cool.
definitely, it's hard. I just got my PhD in May, so I started working full-time.
Congrats!
Thank you. I started working full-time as a professor at Florida Atlantic University. So I try to plan my syllabi and schedules ahead of time to when, I look at the show calendar. If I know the futurity is, the week around Thanksgiving, that works because typically campus is closed for Thanksgiving anyway. And it's going to be a little tricky with NRBC. I'm going to have to see when spring break is. But, yeah, I try to go to as many as I can. When it comes to the big shows, I go to what Dave plans to do. So if he's doing NRBC and Futurity, and those are our big shows for the year, then I'm doing those. And we don't typically do the Derby because it's a little far and it's super hot on the horses. So to haul from South Florida to Oklahoma, it's just a lot. But we try to do, in between those bigger shows to find one that is, out of state. We try to do, I think it's Williamston, North Carolina. So we did what is that? That's NARS. So we did the Reining Stakes in July. But, yeah, I try to show as often as I can. I love, obviously, showing in general. I also just like the atmosphere. I like being at shows.
Right.
It's always been enjoyable for me, and, growing up in it, it's never been so much as a stressful. We have a lot of ex-hunters and jumpers in our barn, and a lot of them get really worked up over getting ready to show. For me, it's more of how calm and collected can I be about this without detracting from, how flashy and how fast I can go? Because I'm moving fast, but I'm very slow with my body, if that makes sense. So it's like, okay, remember the patterns, but also remember to show and not just ride. Remember to keep riding, but remember to breathe. So it's a lot of things that you're juggling at once, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. But, yeah, in terms of goals, it's really, I got him on my birthday almost 2 years ago, so in January of 2022. And the first year was getting to know him, so as many shows as I could go to and get to know what he's like in the pen and, continually try to get better. And this year we've, cranked it up a notch. Let's up the degree of difficulty. Let's up his potential. We know that he has it in him, and it's more so me trying to catch up and try to conjure that without losing control, right? So we've had a really good year. We were in the shootout at NRBC. I'll be out of green this year and in rookie the next year. So really just continuously improving in terms of goals. Like, I'm not out here to be winning every single show that I'm in, but as long as I can either compete with my previous score and up that, if I can keep it consistent, if he can stay consistent with me, which he has, he's a saint. I can't celebrate him enough, really. He has just been not only a good teacher, but the best partner too, and now we're really synced up to where I know him well enough that if today is going to be the day that we really go in there and run, awesome, how exciting. And if this is a day where he's not fully focused and there's a little bit of ADHD horse in there, okay, let's focus more on corrects then. So, but yeah.
They do have off days like that. Like, they're humans, okay? Like, horses do have off days like that.
Absolutely. And, I don't take that personally, and I don't hold it against him. It happens. So really it's just, in terms of goals, it's just to continuously get better. It's mastery always, and to keep learning. And that's what's so addicting about this sport, is that progress is always there. That potential for progress is always there. But there's always new things to learn in that process. And maybe that's, again, me kind of wanting to continue to learn, obviously, with continuing my education for as long as I have. There's always things to work on.
Well, that's cool you said Williamston, because that's not far from me. And I think we actually, BMAR Media, I do embroidery and awards and stuff. We kind of sponsored that show. We, donated to the youth or whatever that raised for cancer. Yeah, so that's not far from me at all, because I'm in North Carolina. Yeah, so, but I think that it's really cool, back to kind of what you were just saying about, your head game going into shows. You are right, because some people can get real caught up in they get frantic and they get this and they get that, and their horse is like
Yeah.
the calm one, And if you
Mhm.
flip it around, I've always believed that if you try to stay calm and keep your head game high, everything else will just kind of flow. You'll be able to handle whatever comes at you in an easier format if your head game is like on point.
Yeah, not going in there and trying to be perfect, and which is,
Right.
all around world. A lot of the equitation was like that, and pleasure was like that. So really kind of deprogramming that out and going into it's just me and my horse is really what keeps me grounded. But
Yeah.
I know there are people that get really still worked up. Like, I got to go in there and be the best and do this and be super, everything has to be big and flashy and loose rein, and then things, the wheels can fall off really quick. So, go in there a little bit on the defensive and a little bit like, okay, it's just me and him. And then if the first maneuver or two go great, okay, I can loosen the reins a little bit and we can ride. Let's go. So that's always kind of been my way.
Well, I mean, it's, it was working, obviously, so, I mean, but I think it's cool that you it's easy. It's really, you are right. It's very easy to get caught up in, okay, well, I need to win this. This needs to be the best. This needs to be perfect, da-da-da-da. And it's like, as humans, we tend to forget, okay, well, there's going to be another show. Like, this is not the end of the world. This is not, it's okay.
Always, yeah.
And also people kind of forget. Well, yeah, and they forget that you're dealing with your partner is another living, breathing thing. Like, exactly. I think I've talked about it before. You're not dealing with a basketball or a baseball or a football.
Yeah, and horses do things all the time that you don't expect, just like other people do, and it helps. Like, I think going back to going to as many shows as I can, it's always wondering and always kind of being one step ahead for me too.
Right.
Like, no, I know that he has a potential to want to anticipate lead changes. Okay, so let's prepare for that, but try not to expect it. And kind of with every maneuver, you kind of learn your horse's quirks and you learn how to work with those.
Now, let me go off of horses really quick. What made you want to get your PhD? Was it just something that was needed for your career, or was it just something that your own personal, like, goal setting that you just wanted to go back to school and have that?
I've always loved school, right? So which I feel like is kind of hard to do with horses, and art too.
Right.
I mean, I feel like I kind of have a weird inclination for these three things that don't really work together all the time. But yeah, so I've always loved writing.
I think it's cool, just saying.
Thank you. But I've always liked school. I've always liked learning, like I was kind of mentioning earlier. And when I was finishing I think it was my sophomore year of undergrad, my counselor, I went in for like a planning the next semester of my classes, and she told me, all right, you're on set to graduate in 2 semesters from now. And I was like, wait, what? I'm not ready for that. So I did their dual, I went to FSU and for both undergrad and for my master's. So I said, let's do the dual degree program because I came in with a bunch of AP credits from high school. That's why I was set to graduate early. And I was like, wait, I don't want to leave just as a 20-year-old. I want to, I was in a sorority and I didn't want to leave school yet. But also I wasn't ready to do whatever that next step was, whether it was start working or go straight into grad school. So I added a second degree in studio art. So I did get a little bit of training in terms of oil painting. It wasn't super, I work mostly with acrylic, and I guess it was helpful to learn.
I was going to ask you that.
Okay. So yeah, their classes were very focused on composition and technique with oil, which I don't tend to work with. So it was cool to get that experience and to learn how to in case I ever wanted to. Yeah. But I work very quickly, so acrylic is more for me. It dries quickly, it blends easy, you work very fast throughout. So I like working in layers, which oil kind of helps with too, but you have to wait so long for it to dry. And then I was like, okay, yeah, acrylic is my jam, I'm sticking with this. But yeah, then that helps, kind of extend my undergrad a little bit longer. And then from there, I thought, okay, this art degree didn't really, it helped me, but I don't think I really need to keep pursuing it in the professional setting, like with a teacher or with a coach or in a group setting. I like working alone, and I like working at my own pace and working quickly. So having to break it up into chunks of 3 hours once a week wasn't really my favorite. But I loved communication, and I loved writing, and I loved researching, and I thought all of the communication and sociology and social psychology theories that I was working with in the other degree were super cool and super interesting. And social media has always been a huge part of my life too. And from there, my mom, like when I was getting ready to graduate at the beginning of senior year undergrad, she was like, you might as well just go into grad school, because my mom did that too, and she always regretted not going straight into her PhD after her master's because, well, one, she had me, and it was hard to go into a doctoral program with an infant, but she was a little bit of her instilling it, and also she wasn't wrong. I do love school, and I always found it easy, so might as well pursue this. Her thing was that you're never going to regret education, and you can always decide halfway through, you know, whether you want to keep pursuing it or if you want to take this and make it more practical and apply it somewhere else. So from there, I decided, okay, I'll do the master's. And from there, I had one professor that he really turned into my mentor and still kind of is today, at least academically. And he was my thesis advisor. My thesis was on interpersonal romantic relationships and Instagram's, how people, I guess, like, I'm trying to make it in the most, like, concise way to explain it, but how filtering and editing your pictures and, you know, how people can enhance their certain features, like, so apps like Facetune and things like that.
Catfishing 101.
Right. Exactly. That's the easiest way to explain it. Basically, like how catfishing on social media, if you're already in a romantic relationship, how that can affect that relationship. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I worked with him. I'm sorry.
No, I didn't. I don't want to interrupt you, but that would be a whole. I mean, we could talk about that for hours,
Right.
because it is. I think it's a bad. I think it's a bad thing, because not only does it mess with, like, people's perceptions of themselves, their own, like, their own confidence and stuff like that. Because, you know, you get on the internet, you scroll and you compare. It's human nature. You know, they tell you not to do it, but it's there. It's in your face 24/7. So you're comparing yourself to something that's not real. And then there's no telling what isn't real and is not real. And so now you get pulled into certain things that, you know, you're already, like, starting a relationship off on something that isn't true. How can you expect that to last?
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, this is, like I said, I wrote an entire thesis on this, so I can talk about this for hours too. But through that advisor for that thesis, and it's funny that he did this because it was like 1 month before applications for PhD programs were due. So he was like, I really think you should do it. I think you're curious. I think that you're a good writer, and you taught yourself how to do a lot of this when, you know, when it was over the summer, and he taught me basically, or not taught me, but gave me the reins pretty much, and was like, learn how to do statistics on SPSS, and this is your data, and come back in the fall with your data chart. And I was like, okay. So kind of watched a couple of YouTube tutorials, knew my data and knew my work, but it was kind of a whole new technology that I had never worked before. But he was impressed with the fact that I took the initiative to try anyway, and said, I think that you'd be a good fit for a PhD program, and I'm excited to help you with that if you are interested. And I was like, okay, yeah. I would basically, like, listen to anything that he told me because I thought he was so smart and admired him so much. So went along with it, and then moved back south to FAU, where I'm working now. So it's funny that that worked out. But yeah, moved back here, and instead of the Instagram specifically route, my research pivoted a little bit to look at toxic masculinity and image-based sexual assault, so basically revenge porn. And for about 1.5 years, I was interviewing victims of revenge porn, and that turned into my dissertation and looking at hegemonic and toxic masculinity online and how those gender structures kind of mirror themselves online to the offline.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because it is a thing. It is very much a thing. And people, like, because, you know, I don't want to say that I don't want to come across, I don't want to offend anybody, but I feel like a little more, if you're a little more educated about the psychological aspects of this stuff, because obviously you are, right? Those that aren't automatically assume, it's just kind of like the basics of calling somebody crazy. They're like, oh, okay, well, that person's crazy, never mind,
Why would you
but actually it's
like it's her fault for even sending that. It's way deeper than that.
It is. It is very much deeper than that, but it's hard to kind of explain that and talk about that to somebody who doesn't quite understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm glad you brought that up because it is a thing. I'm glad that like you confirmed that it is, and it's not just with porn. It's with other things. It's with business. It's with friendship. It's with romantic relate. It's across the board. People do it all the time with all kinds of stuff.
Oh yeah, it extends everywhere. It was more so to focus on that because that's something that is not talked about enough.
Right.
And,
it's not.
Right. And there's so many people that are affected by it that are either scared to talk about it or don't want it, to tarnish their reputation when really they didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes these pictures aren't pictures that they even took. So it's definitely it can be demoralizing to listen to these stories so often and to hear it. It's very depressing. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that I did take over that because it needed more attention. And I'm glad that it is getting a little bit more media attention at least. There was that Netflix documentary on the internet's most hated man, Hunter Moore, who started one of those image post threads where it was basically just either exes or other women even, and just people in general that were like, oh, I have nudes on this girl and I have this and I have this. Does anybody have anything on this? Like they were trading baseball cards for girls' bodies. Yeah, it's horrible. So it's disgusting that it happens, but I'm glad that women are feeling more empowered to talk about it more openly and share their experiences with it because it is slowly getting more legislation, more protection for people. And, it's a snowball effect. Like the more that you are open, it's very similar to the Me Too movement where, one person that has enough power and sway to say something and it works, more people feel empowered to do so too. So,
well, I'm so glad that. Let me ask you this. I obviously you have a PhD in it, so you have, the educational background to kind of confirm it. But to me, when I kind of see, like, you give you an example, I actually ran across something on TikTok the other day about this whole drama with this girl named Bree Powers and this guy. They were like, do you know what I'm talking about? The situation?
Oh, yeah. I've been following that, too. That's been crazy.
Right. So a part of me was kind of like, I don't feel bad for the girl, but if you actually listen to her, she's right when she says, okay, well, you just wasted my time. We have a cancellation fee. Now, if that would have happened to anybody else prior to him posting his video, he would have been the bad guy.
Yeah.
For leaving her hanging. Like any or normal person, like at your hair salon, they have a cancellation fee. Or like my chiropractor, they sat there and told me, we will charge you if you don't show up. So, to see that flipped, and now she's getting absolutely bombarded on the internet. She's just getting ran through the mud. Now, I'm not condoning some of her responses. She could probably shut up at a certain point. But both of her parents committed suicide. Like, if you actually look at her stuff, you're like, okay,
there's a lot. Wrong. There's a lot to unpack with her, and there's a lot to unpack with every story. I think that, first of all, I agree. He should not have found, or at least, like, even if she had her phone number posted online and that's how he found it, it doesn't give him the right to bash her. I don't know. It's a very tricky thing to argue from both sides because I think that, her posting that video of him was nuts. And then her, like, going on a tirade after that, and then all these other people coming out of the woodwork sharing their experiences with her. One led to another, and she basically opened a Pandora's box on TikTok about herself, which sucks. But also, the more that she talks about herself and her upbringing, the more you kind of empathize with, okay, you don't want to say, like, you're messed up, but clearly there's damage and baggage there that may be manifesting itself through the way that she has behaved in the past, which, is sad. So the bullying I don't condone, but once you are a little bit more, I guess, cognizant of how people act and why, and potential reasons why, if you don't know them personally, it's harder to take a side over the other.
Well, I'm just glad that you're bringing this up because I've just kind of watched it. I even had it happen to me. It's crazy that you brought it up. I had it happen to me. I had this girl post this thing. She took the context way out of like she took the conversation way out of context, and it's like people will all of a sudden believe whatever they see and not think anything else about it versus people that may look a little deeper into it or that may know you. It's like, they made me out to be a bad person, but yet I have 30 plus years of nothing but great stuff, like no issues, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, the bad always kind of jumps out at people, and it's easier to take that because it's usually a better story, and people sensationalize things that have really no merit to be sensationalized for. So yeah, I get that. I mean, it goes back to just regular like high school gossip sometimes, it feels like. So everybody always has their own side and version of the story, and some are a little bit more revisionist than others, but yeah, I mean, it's tough when you're on the receiving end of it, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think you're, back to what you said, like there's more legislation coming out for this type of stuff, not just for porn revenge, but also just in general, like business reputation and things of that nature, because, it's not like it was in the 90s or 2000s or even 2010 and on up. Like more people do business on the internet. More people do a lot more things on the internet. I mean, people make a living clearly just off of social media platforms. And it blows my mind that like the justice system and litigation in general hasn't quite caught up to that. They're like, okay, well, it's just social media. Okay, no, not at this point. It's not.
Like just log out. Okay, no, I can't log out. This is my livelihood. Or I can't log out. I build clientele through this. There's no real understanding, especially from older legislators that are like, they don't get it.
They don't.
People are definitely coming around more to the idea that you can't just log off, you can't just turn off the screen. This stuff follows you, and it really does tarnish your reputation, and if there's no protection from it, some of these people, it keeps popping up too. Say that they do have the power to get it deleted, or they do have the power to get these accounts shut down. They just pop up again. It's the omnipresence of it that is scary, but also helpful depending on the context and how, you choose to deal with it or what you're dealing with.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and well, you can probably relate to this too. I mean, it's a great thing to have social media. I would have never known you. I would have never known you existed, and you painted as well as you did if we didn't have TikTok, right? So it's a catch-22. It's a really, really great thing. But I think that hopefully in the coming years that, kind of the old school mentality of, oh, well, it's not a real business. It's not that legit. Okay, well, yeah, it is. We'll kind of come around and accept that and help navigate the legalities that do come with it. Because, some people's businesses are like that girl, Bree Powers, that's what people are going to think when they see her now. And it's like, what is she supposed to do about it?
I know. It's a great thing with a lot of opportunities, but with that, of course, comes potentials for danger and potentials for things to completely, wreck that house of cards that you might have built. And I think that it's not just, trying to protect yourself, but I think just staying true to yourself both on and offline that keeps you safe. Because if enough people know and stand by you in the physical world, typically it doesn't, all that stuff that happens in the digital world will eventually blow over, which is, not the most positive message to give if something is, coming out and, somebody is trying to target you. But at the end of the day, again, like whatever's done in the dark is brought to the light. And if you are a good person, most people will stand by that and believe that. And if there's no real dirt to be brought up, and I say this in the context of Bree Powers too, like if she were a good businesswoman and things were going great for her and her business, and if there weren't all these lies too that were also coming out, it would be a totally different narrative that's being portrayed. But it was him saying that one thing about her and that whole story that from his side that other people were like, oh, actually she attacked me too, and she did this too. And that's like, the potentials that she probably didn't anticipate. But apparently there is a history of treating people poorly outside of the business, which sucks that has to follow you, but that's something that you kind of need to keep in mind at the same time.
Right. Well, let me go back to reining, because we went off into the psychological. I love kind of hearing how other people think of those types of situations and that type of stuff, and to get a chance to ask you about it, and the fact that you have extended education on it just makes me excited. But back to reining. So what do you think of reining in general? What's kind of your most favorite maneuver, and what's one that you kind of had the most hardest to learn or navigate or kind of like get down pat of reining?
Wow. Okay. So I love, I kind of like touched on this earlier, but I mean, I love everything about it. I love the people in it. I love the horses. I think that it's been around long enough now that these horses are bred to just be so good at it too, that it's hard to pick a favorite maneuver because it really does depend on the horse. The horses that I was riding before him, like my dad's hand-me-down horses typically. I never had my own reining horse until Craig, but it was, so depending on the horse, like the first one I ever had, I loved stopping him because I was finally allowed to lope and run and stop, and that was always like, that's the signature move. And then after him, I was riding a horse that was a really good circler, and it was really exciting and fun to go really fast, and how he'd always love to come back to me and slow down. And then for a long time, I was scared of lead changes. And that's not the horse's fault. It's just that I don't think that it never clicked for me as a kid. So I was like, okay, take really hard the other way, and they'll switch. And yeah, they'd switch, but they'd also run off a little bit. So it was like, I had a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth about lead changes for a while, but now with this horse, he is so good at them, almost too good to the fact that he's like, okay, I'm ready, like, and wants to help. And I'm like, no, not yet. So too early. But yeah, so it kind of depends on the horse what my favorite maneuver is. With this one, it changes depending on the show, depending on the day, on whatever we've been working on recently. When I first got him, it was so fun to circle him because he's so good at it. When I got more comfortable with his turnarounds, I loved his turnarounds. Like, I knew that once those were done, the rest of the pattern was going to be gravy. And then now I'm really excited to stop him because I have more of a rhythm with him, and I kind of understand him better. I know him better now. So I think it depends on the horse what my favorite is, and it also just depends on the day and what's going on at the time. But yeah, what I've always struggled with, first it was lead changes. Then when I got older and I knew how to change leads the right way, I wouldn't say that it was something that I struggled with, but it was something that I needed to teach myself to fix. So going back to the all-arounds, I'm always like I want to equitate all the time, right? I'm afraid to ever handle a horse in the ring because I'm like, oh my God, that's a no-no. You don't let the judges see that you're ever doing anything. This is all automatic, and the horse is just reading my mind on what I want him to do. So with stop, true. I would over-equitate, and I'd be too stiff, and then I'd have too much, my knees would be locked, and I'd like pop out of the saddle, or I'd lose my balance, or I'd throw him off. I'm learning to move my body more with him rather than just, look perfect doing it. And that was a really hard muscle memory thing to train out of myself. And there's still days when I forget. So that's been something that I've recently been working on and finally seeing some improvement in, and I'm happy about that. But I mean, I feel like it's not constantly trying to fix or maybe fix, but if there's not something to improve on, then I'm scared of being stagnant, I guess. Like, I feel like there should always be something I am trying to improve and work on, and that's been the thing currently. And for him, it's anticipation because I think he's turning 9 or 10 this year. So for him, he's so good at his job and he loves doing it. And I know he's just trying to help. This comes next, but that's something that I'm not struggling, but been working with, trying to tell him it's okay. I got it. You don't need to figure out the next move. I'll let you know what it is when I'm ready. So that's kind of what we've been working on lately.
That is true about the pleasure world, because I grew up pleasure and going into other disciplines. It is, I don't think people realize, they're like, oh, okay, well, it looks real easy, or you're just sitting there, and it's not. It's hard. Pleasure is hard. It's you've got to be able to know what you're doing, but it is also extremely hard to go from sitting there looking pretty to actually
You got to
I
ride.
hate to say it wrong, but work your horse.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you really got to, like, sometimes you got to hustle them, and sometimes you do kind of have to handle them a little bit. And it took a while for me to mentally remind myself and not have to remind myself anymore that that's okay. Like, they can know that I'm doing things.
Right. But it is hard. It's a mental thing. So I remember, like, trying out cow horses, I guess, quote unquote. This horse was a cow horse, like, sorting, and the guy kept telling me, I kept, like, just envisioning her head going down, and he's like, no, her head needs to be up, and I'm like, I'm trying not to do this.
Yeah, no, my God, I can imagine.
It's like you go from, I know how to ride, to no, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah, right.
But, well, that's really cool. And of course it would be dependent on the horse. Now, I wanted to ask you one more other thing. You mentioned something about, not wanting to get stagnant. This is very true because, they say you rust when you get comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Of all of the disciplines that you've done, is it safe to say that reining has kept you from getting comfortable, or is that just something that's a personal goal of yourself when it comes to horses? Like, you just constantly want to be doing something else, and do you think you're going to stick with reining here on out, or are there any other disciplines that kind of catch your eye that you're curious about that you haven't done?
Oh, yeah. I mean, reining has always been kind of the goal for me, even as a kid. Like, I had angel youth horses. Both of my all-around horses were Saints, and my kind of, like, definitely one of my heart horses, he was like my walk trot barrels and pole bending and all that. He did everything. He did saddle seat. And when the one horse, he was younger, so my dad and I shared my one all-arounder. Whenever he was a little bit scary to me, I'd be like, okay, go get Z out. We're showing All Faithful today. So those three were great. I loved them. And horses are horses. I love whatever I'm doing with them. Reining has been exciting to me because I feel like the better you and your horse get, and the closer and the more in tune that you get with your horse, the more enjoyable it is. And it's enjoyable even without that. I mean, even if you were to catch ride a reiner, and not to say that I ever would, because that sounds scary. I feel like I need to get to know a horse a little bit. But
yeah,
I feel like even pattern work has always been fun because there's always, okay, I did this one, okay, let's improve it this time. Or I did this and this was great. Let's try to match that and make it even better next time. I enjoy that progression. And to look back on, I have a folder that I have shared with my dad that we go back on. So it's like from when I first started reining again in 2021 with my dad's hand-me-down to when I got Craig, and even the first ride with him. It's like night and day to look at then compared to the affiliate so the affiliate earlier this month. To watch and visibly, like, one, to see the visible progress, two, to feel it, and three, the confidence that comes with that is, I don't think that I've ever felt that in any other discipline, which I'm sure if I tried, if I tried one that is similar to that, I would say it would be something like equitation or something like jumping, where like it's a cumulative thing. You have to learn one thing to master this and then move on to the other thing. I like that progression and that kind of graduation into, okay, let's up the level of difficulty. Let's keep going. It's like almost like a video game where it gets
right.
Because you're like, yay, I finally did this. Let's do the harder one now. Oh my God, this is so hard. How am I going to do this? Okay, I made a little bit of progress here. I might be able to do this. This is awesome. I can totally do this. What's next? So that's been the most addicting thing to me, and definitely something that I plan to keep doing for the foreseeable future.
I think the high, I don't want to say high caliber, but the high performers, the high performers in the horse industry, no matter the discipline, I think they thrive off of that progression, because it really is something that you're never going to get to the very top, because the very top is just like, there is no very top, so it's like, I think the high performers just absolutely just thrive in that, what's the next thing, what's the next thing, what's the next thing, because it's just going to keep making you better.
Yeah, and I think staying hungry for it is what, makes a trainer competitive. And two, the difference between like I think that there's trainers everywhere, and they could be great with working with horses, but to be a good coach too is really rare. That's what I admire so much about Dave, is that not only is he great at the sport himself, but that he is so good at choosing, one, matching you with a horse, like finding Craig, it's a match made in heaven, but two, to know what is realistic to tackle today and what's realistic for us to tackle over the year, and to separate those goals and to make them achievable so that that confidence is still there, is a really hard thing to do. And as someone that, as an educator myself, I know I can appreciate that, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. And it's not present in everyone. Like, there's plenty of trainers that will just hop on your horse for, the half hour before you have to warm them up and go in, and, they'll run the pattern and say certain things from, the end gate, say like faster, or like, pull them down a little bit, and when you're in your stop, whatever. There's pointers, but to feel like you're really getting a learning outcome out of your lessons with your trainer is invaluable to me, because I feel like, there's a lot of things you can go out there and do on your own, but to feel like I'm actually achieving these milestones each week is really cool to me. And I feel like that's been super helpful to me, at least.
You are absolutely right, because I have talked to people, and then I know for myself, like, there is a distinct difference between being good with horses and being good with horses and people. And it is very hard, because you've got a lot of really, really great horsemen out there that are not necessarily good with people. You can give them your horse and then get it at another date, and you'll be great. But to find that person who can communicate horse and people is that is top tier.
Explain the behaviorism behind it. Like, when you're snatching your hand too fast, you're going to make them nervous. When you are pulling your hand across to get his nose to the inside, understand the bit is hitting him on the outside, so his nose is going to go out this way. All that logic and the mechanics behind it is really useful to me. So definitely it's a really good skill to have if you are both coaching and training.
Do you think that it's imperative to be able to learn in that fashion? Do you think horses is something that people can just wake up one day and go, okay, well, I want to ride horses, and then call somebody up and show up to a barn and just kind of not care, like just kind of show up and do their thing and then leave? Or do you think horses is best when you are able to explain it from the inside out, or not explain it, but learn it from the inside out, and like the logics and the mechanics that you're just talking about? Because for me, that's the type of learner I am. Like, I want to know I want to know how it works, and then I can succeed in it. Do you think horses, is that something that you have to have with horses?
I think to be successful long term and to have that confidence, first of all, to have that confidence at all, you do need to, for me personally, I feel like I need to know what's going on so that I know what to do correctly and when to do what, basically. To have that confidence, you can only get that, you may learn by doing, and I think it's a combination of that and having the actual thought process behind it for me, because, again, I'm that kind of learner. To have both that cerebral thing going on and the muscle memory going on, which only happens through practice, I think that you can tell, at least in the non-pro setting, right? Like, you can tell, like, who is getting that kind of lesson versus here's your horse, go in and ride. You can really kind of see that, where the hesitations are, where they're, slowing down, where they think, oh, okay, I need to correct this, and to make the right correction. Having that skill and knowledge is essential to what if there's a day when if something happens that's not prepared, your horse spooks in the ring, or if something else happens, if they trip, how to know the difference between those things, right? I feel like you need that experience and that knowledge that comes from experience to really have that confidence and that success long term. That makes sense.
No, makes perfect sense. And it makes me want to ask you this. Now, do you think that the industry has grown solely attributed to Yellowstone? Because I try to ask this to a lot of people. Or do you think it was just a growth that was just kind of bound to happen with reining, period, or horses just in general?
That's a good question, because I feel like it's both. I think that Yellowstone helped bring a lot of new attention and appreciation for it, which I think that has been lacking for a very long time. It's like I said earlier, it's hard to have non-horse friends and being like, oh, I just got home from a horse show, and they'll being like, oh, how was your race too? And you could literally say horse show. Or like people on TikTok will be like, oh my God, I love barrel horses. There's not a barrel in sight. So like weird thing. Yellowstone has helped clarify if I'm talking to someone and they'll be like, oh, okay, so it's like, is it like a rodeo? And I'll be like, no. Have you seen Yellowstone when they're doing the stops and the spins? Oh, okay, yeah, you do that? Yeah, that's it. So it's helped in that sense, and I guess make people more aware of it. And it might have been a catalyst. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs or the business side of, how that is truly reflected in the industry. Yeah. But I think it was bound to happen with, again, these horses are just getting better and better. And there are people that are utilizing social media more. I know that Tom McCutcheon's The Show has been really helpful to me personally to, just get supplemental information here and there. So I think social media has also helped build upon that catalyst that maybe Yellowstone started, The Last Cowboy and The Run for a Million. All of that obviously helps too. But, I mean, look at the futurity last year, the open finals. It is insane to see that many people all in one place, and that it's just electric to be in there too. I can only imagine showing with that kind of crowd. It's so cool. And that's, the end of the year, the biggest show. After being there for 2 weeks, it's like, wow, okay. It's for a lot of people I can see getting burnt out for being at a show for that long. But for me, it's like I can't not be here this long and not experience this. So I think that the more people get exposed to it, it's impossible to not see that growth, I guess, if that, yeah. So I would say like a little bit of both. I think it was bound to happen the more people that do get exposed to it, even just younger generations, kids of people that, were either born into reining or, grew up around it like I did.
Yeah. Well, I think it probably, I agree with what you're saying. I think it was an underground it was really popular underground, but it needed some light to bring a little more population to it to just kind of like push it over the edge and really, really get it going because, it opened up the doors for me, and I had a podcast with Billy Smith, and he said it perfectly. He said we as horse people have a tendency to insulate ourselves, and we do. We, prior to Yellowstone, if you think about it, we were the weird people. It was like we say it. We just said it just now: non-horse and horse. Like it's only two categories, and we have a tendency to insulate ourselves from the outside world. But if we want it to grow, we have to not do that. But there's so many like hoops and bounds and things, just like what you said. I see it on TikTok all the time. A non-horse person will say, "Oh, well, that's abuse, or that's this, or that's that," and they're just uneducated, and that's certain hurdles you have to go through with anything. But I agree with you. I think I agree with exactly what you're saying, that it was popular, but it just needed another light. And Yellowstone was the catalyst for it to bring it to another level that it was bound to happen.
And between that and social media, like Bella Hadid now and the cow horse stuff, I think that people are just becoming more aware now. But I think that, again, Yellowstone came out, a while ago, too.
Yeah, so I think it's on 5 years, maybe. I'll have to Google this.
Yeah, something like that. I remember my dad mentioning it while I was in college. So it's been a while, but I think that it was definitely, it was a push that needed to happen, and I agree that insulation for sure. It's hard for something that, well, one, we're so lucky to have something to be so passionate about, but at the same time, it's almost exhausting to have to educate people on this thing that we're so passionate about at the same time. And it's like, okay, why bother? But I think the more the merrier. I know that there's also that flip side of that where people will see people like Bella Hadid riding and they're like, oh, she's not that good of a rider, or she's just a model, she can't really ride. It's like, let people like things and let them try it. And I mean, again, it's not a bad thing for growth, especially from someone with a platform like that.
She is so cool. I love that whole thing. I love all of it. And I just think it's like, she's like it's just the perfect example of how people will always have an opinion. Because I talked to somebody else who's in cutting, and she's a really cool chick. She was like, I got to meet Bella Hadid, and she saw something where somebody said that Bella was ugly, and she's literally like was voted the most beautiful person in the world. You're like,
are you kidding?
Are you serious right now? What?
Yeah, people always have to have something to pick on, but come on.
Yeah, it's okay. But Yellowstone, so it was 5 seasons of Yellowstone, and it says, like, thank God for Google. What would we do without Google? It says the second part is going to be aired on 2024, and the first part of the 5th season was actually in 2022 because, they had, like, this huge break. So, yeah, that's about right, like 2018, 2019 or whatever it was.
Okay, yeah.
Had to be season 1, I would think, or,
Yeah.
yeah.
Still, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, just that 5-year span, these shows just keep getting bigger and bigger each year. It wasn't like there was one of it after Yellowstone came out and it became, kind of more of a sensation. But every year NRBC is bigger. Every year the Futurity is bigger. Every year the Derby is bigger. Run for a Million is selling out in seconds. So I think that it was, I don't think we can attribute all the growth to it, but I think that it's definitely helped spur it.
Right. Well, even down there in Florida, where your dad's at, where you guys are at, I've gradually just noticed Florida, like, it's just getting all around Florida, all of the disciplines down there. Like, the more people I talk to, the more people that, like, I do orders with, like, through the other side, it's like you don't realize how many people have horses in Florida. All of them.
Yeah.
Cow horses, rain cow, rainers, they're all down there. And I'm like, wow, I had no idea there was that many people with horses in Florida.
No. Yeah, I mean, it helps to have, no snow all year round. It is,
right.
Hurricanes and storms and rain get in the way, so you hope that you have an indoor arena or at least a covered pen. But, yeah, it's, especially with WEC, I think that's helped a lot.
Yeah.
That's such a cool place, and to not only have the Ohio one, but now, an option down here where it doesn't get as cold. It's literally Disney for horse people. It is so cool. And I have friends that just, go out there to go see WEC. They don't necessarily have a background in horses, but they go there just for the day. It's cool to have a place for people to just be exposed to it, even if it's just, hunter jumpers, or they have the pleasure shows and the all-around shows there too. It's been cool to see the gradual growth over time, because I remember when building WEC, and I think it was around when COVID or when lockdown started. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so to see how quickly and how they're still growing. They're still building new parts of it. They just added another hotel. They're building.
Really?
Yeah, they have 2 hotels now, and they're doing a whole, like, outdoor strip mall part of it now. It's amazing to see what these people are doing, and one, if you had that money, why not? Because that would be sick. That's so cool. But yeah, I think it's a great thing to have places like that, especially in places like Florida, because you think of rainy, you think of Texas, you think of Oklahoma, you think of Arizona.
Yeah.
You don't typically think, oh, Florida, but it's grown here too. There's a lot of people that are leaving the English world and are tired of it, and they're just more drawn to the atmosphere of Western and raining, and like, wow, this is so much more laid back. It's like, yeah, it's not quite as...
Well, yeah, a lot of pleasure people are. I hate to say that, but I've noticed quite a lot of pleasure, I guess, quote unquote, all around are starting to leave and get cow curious and do cow stuff and things of that nature, because of what you just said. It is a little more laid back. Like, we sit there and think about what we put ourselves through, and I don't want to make it sound bad. It's not that bad, but you just kind of look at it and go, okay, we get all dressed up, and our horse is literally kind of moving like it's not even supposed to move, and for a ribbon, like, what?
No, definitely.
Again, I'm not knocking it.
Yeah, no, I love the all-around world. I would go back to it if I had the time and the horses to do so. But, yeah, I think back, I was actually just talking about this the other day, like, when I was a youth, wake up at, like, 4 in the morning, showing the hunter in hand. Then at 8 in the morning, you have the hunter under saddle. Then you have, maybe you're going to go practice showmanship with the same horse. Then you're going to ride your reiner at midnight, because that's when the pen is quiet and you can run circles. I think about that and it was like, I'm exhausted after showing my one horse in one class today. Like, I just look back on that, like, how exhausting. But you're a kid, I guess. You don't really think of it that way.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's a lot.
It is a lot. And I'm on their website. I'm on WIC's website now, and this place is not just a horse show facility. I mean, like what you said, they have hotels, they have eat shops, they have all kinds of, like, they have, like, don't they have, like, 5-star restaurants, or like Michelin star restaurants and stuff? Like, it's luxury.
They have pubs. Like, it's such a cool place. I get so excited whenever there is a show there. There wasn't one this year, but I think they are bringing one back at the end of the year. I think in, like, around New Year's Eve. but yeah, but everybody jumps at the opportunity to go to a show there.
Yeah, I just want to visit it. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
they don't have a Michelin star, but they do have like luxury dining. They do like
every place there is delicious too. I'm really I could not recommend it enough. Every restaurant you go to is fantastic.
That's so cool. I mean, I at least want to visit it. Like what you just said, you said it perfectly. It's like Disney World for horse people.
Yeah, it really is.
And I didn't know I did know they had an Ohio one, but I wonder why the Ohio one doesn't get as much. Because when you say World Equestrian Center, your first instinct is Florida. Like that's what I think. That's what most people think. So, I wonder what's going on in the Ohio one. But it is really cool that we have this, and it's funny that you said most hunt seat people or English people are kind of moving into the cow world, because I've noticed that too, but I can't really figure out why, because I always thought that, and maybe I'm wrong, hunt seat, the English generalization, that world of disciplines, English, dressage, all of it, I always thought that was kind of more of the foundation of horses, but I guess Western is more a foundation and English derives from that, or do you think I'm wrong, or am I right?
So it's, so I actually wrote a paper on this a couple of years ago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So English started with the knights, right? So it was dressage first. That was from the knights in England, and they did the whole maneuvers, and it turned into a thing where the knights would exhibit, the cavalry would show, how well they could for the control. And then jumping and racing, thoroughbreds were huge in England too. And then when America was settled, there was a bunch of Spanish stock and English stock of horses, and there were, some of the horses grew feral, and that turned into Mustangs. And to work cattle when they were settling the West, they kept horse racing up in New York, but when they started settling the West, these horses needed to be more functional rather than big and strong and fast for long periods of time. They needed to have short spurts of speed to chase and herd, and they needed to be able to be small enough so that people could get on and off easily if they needed to fix something or, whatever around ranches that they were working. So that turned into reining and the quarter horse and stock breeds, and over time they were called the quarter horse because, they had short bursts of speed. They would race quarter miles, and that's still around today. But, so it has its roots. I guess horses and horse showing has its roots in English, and that's why those Olympic events are, eventing, show jumping, and dressage. But
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so Western is purely American in its roots, but it does somewhat stem from English.
How cool is that? I did know the little part about quarter horse and the quarter mile part, but all that other stuff I didn't know that. I did do I had an episode with a guy who's from England and then came to America, and he did say that over there English is kind of I don't want to say it wrong. Western wasn't necessarily frowned upon, but it just wasn't the norm, and so people didn't really take to it because it wasn't the norm. But I didn't know all of that. I didn't know Western was pretty much American, from us.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, cool. And I could have missed some details that are in there, but that's the gist of how it came to be in terms of showing Western.
Well, I just talked to a girl the other week, and I kind of knew this, but I wasn't for certain. But even the vaquero stuff, the Rommel reins, the
that's
whole
what I was
ranching.
Yeah. Right. So vaqueros were down here, and they were the ranchers that worked it, and that's kind of where breeds all came from. But yeah, I knew I was forgetting something.
She said that was West Coast, and I was like, I never would have thought that. I would have just thought it was Texas ranching, if you don't do any research and figure out where it's from. I think it's cool.
Yeah, no, it is. It was super interesting. It was fun to write that.
Yeah, and how cool that you got to write a paper about it. This is we were meant to speak because you've written papers on all this stuff that I've been wondering about. I can just ask you. Well, I do what?
I find it all super interesting. So yeah, again, all these topics I'm always happy to talk about.
It is really cool actually to kind of like, I mean, it's cliche to say that you have to love horses to want to be a part of horses, but I feel like your average horse person loves them enough to, obviously we're all very passionate about horses,
Mm-hmm.
and in order to do that, the knowledge and the power behind them is just even makes it cooler to kind of understand where this stuff comes from because, even like fox hunting, I guess that would be England too, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that would be England. And 3-day eventing, which I always thought was wild. Like, them people are crazy. Like, that's insane to do what they do.
So scary.
Yeah, that would fall off.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of the ladies, at least at Dave's barn that came from hunter jumpers and dressage, they all love reining because you don't fall off, and they're getting older, so that's part of it.
I could not agree more. Like, when I was younger, we kind of had this little sit-down of my parents, like, okay, well, which way do you want to go? You want to go English? You want to go Western, And it kind of got to the point where it was like, okay, well, my legs hurt in English. We're going to do Western. That seems
right.
And not that it is. It's not any easier. It's just as hard, but,
No, for sure. It's just different. Too different.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and, like, just random person on TikTok. I just think it's really cool, and your artwork is absolutely insane. Like, I just think it's really cool that you're able to do that. It takes a lot of talent, so.
Thank you so much. And, yeah, I'm happy to talk to you, too. Thank you for reaching out.